Now it is the second day of the Africa Development Bank Group meetings in Equatorial Guinea. Delegates from across the African continent have gathered in Central Africa to discuss ways of furthering Africa's growth and how to fund many of the things that are needed. Today, the Africa Digital Financial Inclusion Facility. Let's take you live to Malabo, where my colleague Nzinga Qunta stands waiting to give us an update. Nzinga, thank you for being with us. Let's start with this facility discussion today.
A very good evening to you, Francis, and to our viewers. That African Digital Financial Inclusion Facility that was launched was done so with the hope of trying to include over 332 million people who are currently excluded from the African economy using digital instruments. Francis, we've heard from the African Development Bank that around 60% of these people, these 332 people who are excluded, are women. And as a way of trying to grow Africa's economy as a whole, this facility has been launched in order to try and make sure that people who've got access to smartphones and phones have then access to digital payment systems and different ways of paying, and can start making money, can start moving money and transferring money and so on. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was there, French banks were there, Bank of Luxembourg was there as well. And that was what was on the agenda today. That was one of the biggest things that's happened. We've heard that if women in particular and excluded people have access to this economy that they're excluded from, Africa's emerging market economies could grow by around 6%. So there is a push to try and include women in that economic space. Francis, throughout the day, the different people we've been speaking to, both in the bank and outside of the bank, have been really pushing this narrative of trying to include young women, young people, my apologies, and women, as well as small and medium enterprises into the economy in order to spur Africa's growth forward. Also a focus on agriculture and the importance of that in growing Africa's economy. A professor from the bank saying to me that agriculture needs to be really one of the drivers of economic growth on the African continent. It's simple. We've got so much arable land. Around half of the African population is employed in the agricultural sector, and we import around $35 billion as a continent, agricultural products from outside. He's saying that's an opportunity that shouldn't be missed. People should be focusing on that. It's a way of including people who are marginalized and including people who are not part of the economy in a very simple way. Francis.
So Nzinga, these are huge issues. Just tell us about the overall meeting now. How important and how well is South Africa represented there?
Francis, the meetings have around 3,000 people who are finance ministers, governors, stakeholders, CEOs, captains of industry, world leaders here representing their countries, taking part in the meetings. We know that there's one part of the meetings which are statutory meetings in where the governors of the bank talk about the progress of the bank and what they've done over the last year and their plans for the years going forward. That's the one part. The other part is people coming together and talking about issues like the ones we've just spoken about. South Africa not represented in a large capacity outside of the bank. We were expecting Finance Minister Tito Mboweni perhaps to be here, perhaps Reserve Bank Governor Lesotho Kganyago. They are not here. Who we do know is here is the Finance Minister of Japan, the world's third largest economy, represented here with an entourage of his. We earlier saw Felix Tshisekedi, my apologies, the president of Congo, new president of Congo, as well as Theodore Obiang, the president of Equatorial Guinea, who has been president for over 3 decades, walking around with the bank's, the African Development Bank's president, taking part in meetings. The media was not allowed to go into the session with those two presidents who are there. But Francis, South Africa not represented in any high-level capacity as far as we've seen. We heard on the plane on the way here someone saying, our finance minister won't be here, someone expressing disappointment about that. But it seems as though South Africa is not really represented here and doesn't have a strong presence at all here. But there are large players of large economies, such as Japan, as we've spoken about, the finance minister of Ghana also here, captains of industry from around the world. We're going to be having a state dinner a little bit later on today, and perhaps we'll see more of the leaders that are there. South Africa, though, not really coming to the party.
All right, thank you very much. Nzinga Qunta. So these meetings are looking at the future, the financial future of Africa. The African Development Bank, an important lender on the continent, and of course we have representatives on that bank. The idea always that it wants to uplift the continent as it lends money for certain projects. All right, she was live from Malabo in Equatorial